Hi, this is Cyndi Boste with John Broughton on Retrospectives on 3SER KC Radio. Good luck, mate. Uru.
Well, that don't bother me, and I don't think it should.
To kick off your website, the bio in there mentions that you would, as a youngster, go shopping with your mum on a Friday afternoon for records. What kind of stuff would be found in your shopping bag?
Well, it was all top 40 stuff, top 40 singles, really. You know, like, God, what were we buying? God, songs like Abergavenny and Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep.
Oh, wow.
You know, all that sort of stuff. And then, you know, during teenage years I was buying lots of Gary Glitter and Susie Quatro and Slade, and, you know, we bought everything, really. Everything there was, we sort of grabbed.
We sound like we're about the same vintage, I think.
There you go.
Were you always a fan of rootsy type material? When did that sort of come to be for you?
I reckon it was probably in my early teens. I think when I first heard Nashville Skyline really was a turning point for me. And yeah, then I started listening to a lot of Bob Dylan and Neil Young and, you know, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, things sort of went on a different road. I'd always listened to country music and rock and roll, but yeah, it started to go more down the Jackson Browne, James Taylor, Carole King, all that sort of stuff.
Would there be, if you could sit down and pinpoint something, would there be a universal quality through all the artists that really inspired you to be a musician? I
think melody.
Melody?
I love melody. Melody and a great lyric. I've always been really drawn to that. So, you know, there's lots of different genres that use melody. And, yeah, but that's the thing that probably turns me on the most.
I believe you tinkered around with the piano accordion as a kid. How serious did that get?
Not particularly serious. I had a bit of a full-on accordion teacher that wasn't very pleasant. You know, basically knocked you over the knuckles with a stick if you hit the wrong note, and that kind of puts a kid off an instrument pretty quickly, I reckon. So between that and every time I got a little bit better at it, it'd go up another size. And it just get by the time I had a 160 bass accordion, it was too big. Yes, too big for me to handle. And that was around the time too. There was Johnny Piccolo around too, and he was playing a bit of piano accordion. Yeah, there was, because I used to play with him on the Early Bird show back in those days.
Did you really?
Yes, I did. That is going back some time.
Can you give us a rundown on what you were doing musically before you went solo? To use a well-worn cliche, I believe you really did pay your dues?
I certainly have paid my dues. If playing in bars and bistros all over Victoria are paying your dues for 15 years or so, yep, I've done that. So that's pretty much what I did, you know, from about, I don't know, from the age of about 17 till you know, into my 30s. I was doing cover gigs, basically, 4 or 5 nights a week. And yeah, then eventually I started moving into original music and joined the Preachers, which was the band that my brother had together, and sort of went from there, really. And then slowly started getting my own albums together.
How do you look back on all those years in cover bands now? What do you think it taught you?
Taught me a lot about showmanship and working crowds and dealing with people. Taught me a lot about people and crowds. I don't know, it just makes you a bit tougher, I think, too. It gives you a bit of resilience, and you play in so many different circumstances that you either sink or swim every night, really, so you learn pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does teach you a lot of resilience, I think.
With such an extensive grounding, I guess by the time of your first album, you're about as ready as you would ever be for a solo career?
I think so. I think I was well ready. It takes me a while to get around to things, but I was certainly ready when I did it. So, and, you know, I'm quite grateful for that too. I don't know if I had it all over again, whether I'd do it differently, because it did make sense. I was ready when I was ready to do it, and I think that showed in the album. That's what people were saying in reviews, that they could hear that in the records and in the songs. I was certainly writing much better songs when I started making my records than I was 20 years beforehand. So I'm glad I didn't get to record too many of those earlier little tunes. So I'm quite grateful for that.
So when did you actually get serious about writing?
I think it was probably about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I really started getting, nutting down to it, really. I'd always written songs. I started writing songs when I picked up the guitar because it was easier to write my own songs and learn anybody else's. So I was doing that from the start, but just fell into a bit of a trap, really, of, okay, well, now I need a job, and what can I do? Well, I can sing, and you get paid well for it, if you're doing covers. So, and I didn't look up for lots of years. So I sort of got stuck there in a job, I guess.
Yeah.
Rather than coming from the more artistic bent. So, which now, now I'm an artist and now I'm poor. so there's a payoff. As
many a good artist is.
That's right. Well, it seems to be your reward for choosing art. But anyway, it's all good fun.
Where do you think your writing would be now? Would it be at the same place had you started earlier, do you think?
Well, hopefully I'd probably be even better at it. Maybe if I'd done it earlier. I don't know. I think I learnt a lot by playing great songs that were written by great people. I think a lot of that stuff just is embedded in you, and it's all keeps going around and around. There's not that many original songs around. It's all derivative. But so that was good. I think I learnt a lot about what works in a song and what doesn't. I think I would have been a lot cheesier earlier. I think a combination of good songs, being surrounded by good musicians, good advice, and a lot of time, you're more likely to come up with a good result.
Now, it was a brave move to begin a solo career with an album which dealt with some pretty heavy issues. Were you tentative at all about that?
Well, the funny thing was, I didn't even notice that while it was happening. It wasn't a forethought. It wasn't. I'm going to write an album about this sort of stuff and that sort of stuff. But they just came. It's been said a million times before, but they just came, and it was sort of towards the end of bunching them all together, going, whoa, hold on a minute.
What have I done?
Yeah, this is a bit edgy, I guess, or something. So, or a bit exposing, I guess, more than anything. And then having to sort of do that in public and really aware, I guess, of the other people that implicates more than anything. It feels okay for me to tell my story, but when my stories implicate other people, it's a fine line, I think. So I'm still toing and froing with some of that stuff sometimes. But I'm glad I wrote the things I wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having Karen Tolhurst as producer seems like a match made in heaven. How did you team up with him?
Well, that was actually through the Preachers, Steve Boyd and the Preachers. We just recorded a band, and Steve had got Karen in from New York to produce the album, and that's how I met him, which is a really funny long story, really, because I was a huge Dingoes fan as a teenager, and one of their songs, I think Winter Song or something, was one of the first sort of cover songs I ever learnt.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really funny to come full circle and end up with him producing my first record. And you're right, that the connection is quite something. We certainly meet at the same place. It was an incredible learning curve.
Now, I guess him being such a seasoned musician himself, it must make it easy for you both to relate to each other in the studio. Would you say it's a huge advantage having a fellow musician as a producer?
Yeah, I think so. It has to help, I'm sure, because at least you know what it feels like to be trying to lay a track or to put a song together, or what that feels like in the end, you know, and all the aspects that go into that and how you feel. So that, yeah, it is really helpful. And, you know, I'd had very little experience in the studio until I started making my own records, and it was just fantastic to have someone there who knew what they were doing, because I could just get on with trying to get my bit right, and that was really helpful.
You were a comfortable stage performer right from the start?
Yeah, stage I haven't really had that much problem with, you know. Like I can get, you know, a bit nervous before some shows and whatever, but I think that's more adrenaline than anything else. I don't really suffer too much from stage fright as such, thankfully, but yeah, it's a very emotionally draining thing to do, to get up on a stage, because you do have to create some energy in that space for a concentrated period of time, and it's quite a task. But we make it look easy, don't we? Yeah.
Of course you do. Now, I guess with a lot of songwriters who are coming into their first album, they've got a good storage of material already there, and I guess having all that time before Home Truths, you probably did have a bit that way yourself. Did you feel a bit more pressure on you for the second album to come up with new material?
Yeah, it was a bit, although the only difference in that was when I decided to write Home Truths, I only had one song that I wanted to bring from the past with me anyway, and that was about it. So I did have to just sit down and write another 10 or so songs, and did that in a matter of maybe 10 or 12 months. So it wasn't a big ask to do that again, in a way. It wasn't like I'd had, 30 songs that I thought were pretty good and, could pick from them. I wasn't prepared to use hardly anything that I'd written before. I wanted to start from now. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad I did too, because there's a huge gap between what I was writing 10, 15 years ago to what I'm writing now. Huge gap. So, yeah.
Is there anything about the second album you particularly wanted to do different from the first?
Yeah, it was tricky to approach the second album, particularly going in with the same producer again, and Keren's pretty... Keren's sound is Keren's sound. It's the way it is, and it transfers from one record to another. So that was a sort of tricky angle, because we didn't want to just record another Home Truth. Yeah, it's a funny one. I'm still sort of unsettled in some ways with Push. I'm not sure whether it worked the way I really wanted it to go. I love the songs on Push. I think there's some really great songs on it. But I'm still bit both ways. Sometimes I listen to the album and think, no, that's great, it's perfect, it's just what you wanted. And then other times it's like, don't know, I might have taken a different approach with that. But I suppose that happens with just about every album you do anyway. There's always, could have done that differently, or might have done that. It's how long's a piece of string, really? So, but yeah, overall, really happy with the quality, particularly in the production of both of the albums, and hopefully the songs themselves ain't too bad.
What about the recording process? Was that any different, or do you find yourself becoming a bit of a creature of habit in the studio?
I'm not really all that at home in the studio, to be honest. It's still a bit of a foreign land to me, because quite often, although we approached it a little bit differently on the second album, the first album I was sort of separated from my guitar, and that in itself is just bizarre, because I feel like I sing with the guitar. So that changes the way you approach the performance too. So there's a lot of readjusting, and headphones. That's a different world. It's not the same. It's not very organic, the recording process, and so I think you just have to spend a lot of time in the studio and get used to that. Some people revel in it. I'm sort of all over the place with it.
You've received some mighty reviews for your albums to date. Does it put some pressure on you to have something to live up to? Do you take a lot of notice of that?
Well, I always aim to make good records. You know, I'd be really disappointed, and I hope I wouldn't even bother putting a record out that I didn't think stood up in some way. You know, whether this, I don't usually record a song unless I think it's worth recording. So hopefully, you know, even if it took 3 years for the next album to come, it would be a good one. So whether the reviews were good or not, I'd still aim for it to be a great record.
What's the status of overseas interests in your work?
You know, there is interest out there. I sell records all over the world, and you know, not in massive quantities, but it sells in America and Belgium and Holland and Germany and England, and you know, people know about it, and there's press reviews and that. I've had some reviews in New York and LA and all over the place, but I don't know what that means at the end of the day, really, other than, well, you beaut. another bit for the scrapbook.
Yeah. It's not a huge priority for you, though.
No, look, I'd actually really like to go to Germany. I think Germany's a really exciting sort of roots market. A lot of people, and they really love their roots music. Be interesting to see. Hear so many good stories about how wonderful it is to play in Europe and what the audiences are like and how musicians are treated. It sounds very inviting. But, you know, again, that's all money and risk and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe at some stage, I'd really like to.
Important is road testing new material to you. Do you, like with the two albums to date, have you taken a lot of notice of crowd reactions before making final decisions on what to record and what not to record?
No, that's really funny. You know, in a perfect world, I reckon you should really have the set of songs that you reckon you're going to record and be able to play them live for at least a few months out there, just to get a feel and see what happens naturally on stage, where they go, let them run a bit. But that's never sort of panned out the way I've the process with putting it all together. It seems I get a bunch of songs together, and it's sort of, I call Karen and go, you know, I've got 7 songs together, and he says, I'll put them down on a tape and send them across, and all of a sudden we're meeting and arranging and putting them down. Like, it's because of all the time constraints and that. He can only be in the country for a certain amount of time and got to get back and do other stuff. So I haven't had that opportunity, and I think it would be a really good way of doing things if you can.
So you've already made that decision, you're going to go with Karen again next time around? No,
I'm doing a little sort of in-between sort of album at the moment that I'm recording, which is just going to be that I'm producing myself around the kitchen table, just quite acoustic sort of approach to a whole bunch of other Melbourne-based, really, singer-songwriters, and just doing a few of other people's songs, just a little in-betweeny. And then hopefully in about 12 months do another studio album. And I don't know, I'll probably co-produce it with somebody else, but maybe not Karen this time, just to break from just to try something else.
Yeah.
And I envisage coming back at some stage that we might do another album together a little further down the line, and maybe co-produce one together and maybe write a few songs together. That could be good. But he's been a fantastic advisor and a great player.
Yeah.
Just a magic player.
No doubt about that.
Yep.
Are you very self-critical of your own work? You harsh judge of yourself? Yes,
I am. Very hard to please. Well, for myself, what everybody else plays is pretty cool, I reckon, most of the time. But there's always something to pick out of mine. But you know, that's just the way I am, so that's all right.
Same goes with your writing. Are you really picky there too?
Yeah, I am really picky with that. You only get a few lines per song, really. They might as well work. You know, there's not too much room to throw too many away. You know, and there's so many great songwriters around, particularly in this country, that you want to keep on your toes.
Absolutely.
Be your best.
What do you think's your best quality as a writer?
Gee, I don't know what my best... I think, hopefully my lyrics. Hopefully it's my lyrics that are my strong point. I'd like to think that they are, and that they're concise but poetic at the same time, and you know, hold together as a story.
And
that's the plan. Or that they make some sort of sense to people.
No, you're working the plan so far, Cyndi, without a doubt.
No, good. Good.
What are your plans for 2004?
I think a lot more touring again next year. I've got a band in Sydney that I've been rehearsing up for a while, and still got a band down here. So I've just about got Melbourne, Adelaide, New South Wales and Queensland covered now, so I can pick up players and get around a bit cheaper by not having to drag people around the country.
Mm-hmm.
That's another plan. I'll let you know in about 12 months' time how well that plan went. But, you know, the theory's good. If you've got a rhythm section in every city, then you don't have to pack them in the back of your car.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so if I can do a bit of that and just keep trying to let people know that I'm out and about. I think that's the hardest thing in this country, because there's just no mainstream radio support for the type of music we do. So nobody knows you're around unless you're a real music fan and you're out there looking for it.
And just to look further down the track, where would you just like to see yourself in about 5 years' time?
Oh, retired. Definitely.
Retired?
Yeah. Running a songwriting business for young and up-and-coming artists. I'd love to actually move into, working with other artists, maybe producing, I don't know. Maybe you have to know a little bit too much about the technology for me. That might put me off a bit. But certainly working with young artists and developing songwriting skills and maybe helping other people out along the way. That's where I sort of see it going for me, and then maybe just putting out an album every now and again when it strikes me I've got the material to do it. That would be my dream job, I think.
And I've got to ask you too, when I was doing the research for this, one thing that kept cropping up in all the articles I read was your 1964 EH white station wagon.
Oh, you had to bring that up. Now it's gone to God.
Has it really?
Yeah, it's gone to God.
Oh, what a shame.
It was a shame, but it was a ripper. Yeah. Oh, well. Oh, now I've got a Holden Commodore station wagon, which just isn't as sexy at all. Like,
no.
Not quite the same. But it's easier to drive.
Oh, well.
Yeah, oh, well. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a bit of style for convenience.
Be practical, yeah.
So they tell us.
Cyndi, thanks for your time. It's been a treat catching up with you.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, not a problem at all. And thanks for being one of the best things to happen to local roots music in many a year.
Oh, good on you. Thanks, John.
And, we'll keep flying the flag for you for sure.
Good on you. Well, hopefully I'll get to see you one day. You have to come up and tap me on the shoulder and say hello.
Will do. I'll make a pest of myself for sure.
Good on you.
Okay.
See you later.
Thanks, Cyndi. Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.